the innovation, working on certain number of countries in Asia, covering as much as we can. And today we will be looking at the situation in Switch Asia countries, and together with you, after we would listen about the outcome of work that colleagues have been doing in many countries, looking at the challenges and insight. We will listen to your views on that and how we can move further on this issue, which is, as you know, is already high on the agenda. There are global discussions that has been going now for some years, and hopefully they can be concluded soon with something that many countries, experts are waiting for in order to see how we can effectively have legal documents on that, binding, not binding. We will let the UN and the countries discuss about the issue. We are here to exchange about the status of the management in Southeast Asian countries and enable a discussion in order to see how we can inform each other and inform at the end, if possible, the negotiators that will be discussing on behalf of their country, that can mainstream in their own policies issues related to sustainable consumption and production and circular economy, which are two elements that are fundamental for us at Switch Asia and key drivers for the whole work of the European Commission in this context on European Union. As you know, Southeast Asia is one of the most affected region in this issue of plastics. They're facing a lot of challenges, but at the same time, we have seen in many countries interesting policies prepared, some of them being implemented with yet a lot of challenges. But we have also seen a lot of innovations going around. Innovation by the entrepreneur, by the business sector, by startups in dealing with those elements of the plastic. And we wish to hear from you also on experience that can be shared with the South Asia countries when it comes from the UN or European Environmental Agency, but also among yourselves, so from experts from different countries. I won't go much further on that. I would just like to start the meeting and have you just some in-house elements. Can you put the slide? Basically, to remind you that please unmute when you are not speaking, so we don't have interferences. It's not yet there. That the session is recorded. It will be shared later on with each and every one of you. You have it there? No. No, we don't have it on the screen. It should be shared with everybody, because then it will be all these slides coming in. Perfect, that's coming in. Okay, go on next. At least here we have them, and we have the list, the set of slides that on which we will be working all together. It will be recorded, and we will be sharing it with you all afterwards, the discussion and the PowerPoint and so on. If you have questions, long questions, please don't hesitate to send them by email. And the email is there, sachin@switchasia.eu. We will do our best to reply to all of them. And during the session, you have the chat box. So just put your question there, and we'll try to see how we can take them over as much as possible, if possible, all of them. Next one, we are going now to the opening session, where we'll be asking, next Mime. We'll be asking two dear colleagues here who will introduce the topic for us from their own perspective. Sachin Joshi, the expert of Switch Asia, is policy support component, who will brief us about what Switch Asia is doing in this context. And then we will hear from Novita Sari, delegation of European Union to Indonesia, and Brunei Darussalam, delegation of European Union to ASEAN. And they are covering most of the region on which we are working. So, Sachin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. I think Sachin is still muted.
I am so sorry about rambling around with the mute on. Okay, so greetings again. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to this important workshop on plastics management in Southeast Asia. We are honored to have such a diverse and dedicated group of participants today. I see over 80 people join in, all committed to addressing the pressing challenge of plastic waste in our region. At first, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers and guests. A special acknowledgement goes to the EU delegation for their invaluable presence and support. The workshop is part of the EU Switch Asia program. Since its inception in 2007, Switch Asia has been instrumental in funding and supporting projects that drive meaningful change in sustainable consumption production and related topics such as circular economy, resource efficiency, climate change. Southeast Asia is recognized as a global hotspot for plastic pollution. There are a variety of reasons for it, which we might dwell into in the next 1.5 hours. The region faces significant challenges due to high plastic pollution, inadequate waste management infrastructure, and the influx of plastic waste imports. Without coordinated efforts, plastic pollution will continue to threaten marine ecosystems, which is extremely critical to this part of the world. The public health and, of course, economic sustainability of all the economies in the region. As far as, so the Switch Asia program has two components to it. The grants program has supported various impactful projects aimed at addressing plastic waste and promoting circular economy solutions. A couple of notable examples include preventing plastics in Myanmar, where a project focused on reducing plastic waste and promoting sustainable alternatives in the country, and Plastic Smart Cambodia, an initiative aimed at improving waste management and recycling infrastructure in the country. The other component is the policy support component, to which we all belong here from Switch Asia this afternoon. And the policy component plays a critical role in providing technical assistance to policymakers. Some of the technical advisories which are related to the topic that we are discussing today. Of course, the most direct one is plastics governance engagement, where we are supporting countries in developing policies aligned with the Global Plastics Treaty negotiations. And our colleague Cosima, who's replacing Per this afternoon, will be covering more about that technical advisory and the outputs from that in a bit. And then the other two relevant technical advisories are the business action for circular economy in ASEAN, where we are mobilizing businesses to adopt circular economy practices and sustainable plastics management. And we are very delighted to have a couple of the business case studies which are documented, also presented today. And finally, we have the EPR, which is the Extended Producer Responsibility Systems, which increasingly is becoming central to the management of plastics. And you also find it mentioned in the Global Plastics Treaty. So the importance of sustainable consumption and production is essential to managing plastics effectively. By promoting responsible production consumption patterns, SCP can help reduce plastic waste at its source, encourages sustainable alternatives, and strengthens circular economy principles. Strengthening SCP policies and practices across Southeast Asia will be key to addressing plastic pollution and ensuring long-term environmental sustainability. As we move into today's discussions, I encourage you to participate actively, share insights, and work together to identify practical solutions that will advance sustainable plastics management in the region. By collaborating, we can make a lasting impact on reducing plastic pollution and creating a more sustainable future. Thank you, and I look forward to a productive exchange today.
Thank you, Sashim. As we said, by collaborating, and that's exactly why we are here. Mute. Now, can I ask, mute, Sashim, mute. Can I ask now Novita from the EU delegation? And before I give you the floor, I would like to just to express our great thanks for your support in the region, but also for the European Union and European Commission for the great support they have provided to Switch Asia, without which it won't exist. Novita, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arab, and thank you, Sachin. Hello, good afternoon, distinguished panelists and participants. So my name is Novita Sari. I'm a program manager from the cooperation section in the EU delegation to Indonesia and ASEAN in Jakarta. It is my pleasure to be here today at this important discussion on transitioning to SCP and circular economy, plastic policies and actions in Southeast Asia countries. I would like to extend my gratitude to Switch Asia Policy Support Component for organizing this event and for its support to advancing the circular economy across the Southeast Asian countries. I also extend my appreciation to all participants here today. I saw 85 participants connected online today, as they are a key to driving this transformation on the ground. Southeast Asia is at a pivotal moment in its environmental journey. The area is a region with biodiversity rich, hosting some of the world's most beautiful natural treasures. But like many other areas, Southeast Asia faces significant environmental challenges, including biodiversity loss, waste management, plastics, and pollution. The transition to a circular economy presents a critical opportunity to address these issues. The circular economy is an economic model that brings efficiency, innovation, and growth, and it will help protecting natural resources. The EU is firmly committed to working together with Southeast Asian countries to advance the circular economy. Let me share some few thoughts on the European experience in the circular economy. So the circular economy has been a priority for the European Union for more than 10 years. Unlike Southeast Asia, Europe is not rich in natural resources. Therefore, the circular economy is a strategic necessity for the EU. By now, the transition to a circular economy is well underway in Europe. As part of the European Green Deal, it's the EU commitment for achieving climate neutrality by 2050. The EU work on initiative for sustainable products, monitoring and innovation, among others. On plastics, the EU is paving the way for a new global agreement to support the global shift to a circular economy as outlined in the Circular Economy Action Plan and as mandated by the United Nations Environmental Assembly that in March 2022 launched negotiation for a new internationally legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. The new instrument should address plastic pollution throughout the entire plastic life cycle in order to minimize the mismanagement of plastics and prevent plastic from entering the environment. The transition is not always easy. It questions common practices and requires a deep transformation to production and consumption patterns. In some cases, it affects our relations with international partners. In the coming years, the circular economy will remain a priority for Europe. The EU will remain firmly committed to finding a global solution. Our oceans, our environment, and citizens around the globe need it. As quoted by Ms. Jessica Roswell, the EU Commissioner for Environment, Water Resilience, and a Competitive Circular Economy at the 5th session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Global Plastic Treaty in Busan, December last year. Being said, the EU committed to work together on making consumption and production more sustainable, building a market for secondary raw materials, and striving for an ambitious global plastic treaty. In closing, let me reiterate the European Union's commitment to working together and supporting transition to a circular economy. Together, we can build a model of development that not only promotes sustainability, but also drives innovation and creates lasting economic benefits. Let's use this event as a platform to exchange ideas, share best practices, and chart a path forward for the sustainable consumption and production and circular economy implementation. I'm confident that the actions we take today will lead to an even more sustainable and prosperous tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Novita. Thank you for all this great idea. I will take one important point on which you have been rightly insisting and which is in the title, the word transition. We are not going to solve the problem of plastics overnight. It takes time. We need to change behavior. We need to change production processes. So we need to duly factor in the time needed to make the change. And that's why the word transitioning, which might apply differently to different regions, to different countries, is extremely important to understand in order to make sure that what we will be suggesting will be implementable. And I will insist together, as Sachin and Novita has highlighted. With this letter here now, the outcome, the insight of the work that has been done in a certain number of countries, and Cosima will lead us on this issue. So Cosima, can you please present us the outcome, the insights of the work that has been done that will inform the discussion that we'll be having?
Yes, and I hope that my screen is now visible in full screen mode.
Not full screen yet.
Okay.
She's doing it, no? Directly.
Ah, this is Mimi, would you then be able to present, and I will just tell you when to move to the next slide? Great. Yes. So let me start with the work that we have been doing with regard to the plastics TA. Please go back to the previous slide, Mimi. So we were engaging both with the international ongoing process on the plastics treaty negotiations, as well as providing information on understanding the plastics challenge in different Asian regions and nationally through the development of 12 country profiles covering Central Asia, South Asia, as well as Southeast Asia. For this, we, of course, conducted diligent desk research, and I'll also speak about the sources that we used. We engaged with different actors in the plastic space, and we also collected business cases. This also, of course, in the context of other TAs of the Switch Asia PSC, like ASEBA, the Circular Economy Business Alliance. In terms of additional products, there were also overarching analysis that were being done by the team, as well as workshops, for example, on financing, chemicals of concern, etc., as well as updates on the plastics treaty negotiations. And we also conducted advisory and exchange with our stakeholders and partners. Next slide, please. The country profiles that I referred to were the countries that we analyzed were selected by a multi-criteria analysis, which included objective criteria, like the importance of plastics trade, plastics production, as well as per capita plastics waste and mismanaged waste, as well as some subjective criteria, like, for example, for Nepal, Maldives, and Sri Lanka, which aren't very high on the previously named criteria. But we have been active in these countries on plastics with the Switch Asia program, and therefore we also wanted to give an overview over the policy status as well as private sector initiatives. In Southeast Asia, we have the profiles of Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia published, and Philippines and Thailand are on the road to being published, I think even this week, potentially. Next slide, please. Our analytical work for these profiles focused both on the context, so really facts and figures with regard to plastics. This included plastic production, plastic waste generated, plastic waste per capita generated, as well as plastic trade. And after several rounds of reviewing data, we had decided to use the same data sources for these plastic profiles, combined, like coming up with a new combination of data that can be compared also between the countries. So for the facts and figures, we used Earth Action data. For trade figures, we used UNCTAD data. For plastics growth projection, we used Morder Intelligence, which is a business consultancy. And this we, of course, supplied then also with national sources. But I think by using these specific data pools, we have reached also a level of comparability between the country profiles, which is useful. And also maybe clears up a little bit of the very crowded plastics data space, where also sometimes countries aren't quite happy with how they are being analyzed by different institutions, but these data seemed very solid. In addition to the facts and figures, what was being done was in-depth analysis of the policy landscape, and what you see here is on the slide is a quick overview over one part of the policy analysis that we conducted. And what you can see is that our experts screened the policy landscape along the value chain of plastics. So are there regulations with regard to, and I now read out the categories on top: production of plastics in the form of primary polymers. Are there policies with regard to manufacturing, consumption, waste management, and end of life, or trade? And the reason why trade is the last one is, of course, that in Southeast Asia and also in other Asian regions, when we talk about trade, we also talk about plastics waste trade. But of course, this is only one aspect. And with regard to these different value chain steps, our experts looked at very specific instruments and whether they would be covered by policy. And this also, this is only part of the analysis that I'm showing. And I really invite you to check out the country profiles, which my colleague has also linked to in the chat right now. In addition to the previously named section, we also had we also looked into private sector innovations, companies that were particularly active, both in terms of large corporates as well as small and medium enterprises. Then we narrowed down really the challenges in the specific country and gave some insights with regard to a way forward. And all of the country profiles also have a long list of references to research further. Next slide, please. And generally speaking, of course, Southeast Asia is a region of very high relevance for the future of plastics. We both have trends and economic factors that really stress this. So it is definitely a global plastics manufacturing and export hub. Due to economic growth, urbanization, and rising plastics consumption, it is really one of the key regions to tackle the challenge. And as mentioned previously, we also have the waste importation challenge, as well as with regard to recycling. Due to lack of recycling infrastructure, the recycling challenge in Southeast Asia is really very great. Then we also have the pressure points, which is that in addition to its own domestic production and waste management problem, Southeast Asia is as a region strongly affected by marine plastic pollution that also originates from elsewhere. And of course, there's also a large vulnerability to environmental and economic impacts. Next slide, please. With regard to the diversity, of course, also of Southeast Asia, what we see is that the countries have different starting points, but do face similar challenges. So one of the key challenges is really a lack of systemic understanding of the plastics challenge. So that currently there is a strong focus on downstream stages, whereas it's very clear that, of course, measures to tackle the challenge need to also include the design and manufacturing stage. What we do see is in many Southeast Asian countries, a very active and multi-pronged policy development. So actually the table that I showed you before in some countries is highly populated by all the different policies that have been developed. I'm sorry. But what we really see also across all countries is a need for policy implementation and enforcement, in addition to these developments and agreements. As well as really the financing to enable the implementation and enforcement. And as I mentioned previously, waste management infrastructure across Southeast Asian countries is not sufficient to face the current production levels. And this is true for collection, sorting, recycling, and landfilling, all of the different stages in terms of waste management. And last but not least, also the informal sector of course, plays a large role. It needs to be considered in any systemic approach to solving the plastics challenge, so that livelihoods are assured. Next slide, please. And I'll just start with some snapshots from our country profile, starting with Thailand, which has the largest per capita plastics waste generation in the region. And we see the environmental, economic, and societal impacts of mismanaged waste there really, really clearly. I don't want to go through all of the points, but I think really interesting is a World Bank study conducted in 2021, where you also see this quote, the true cost to society and the environment is about 10 times higher than plastic's current market price. This was a study conducted by the World Bank in Thailand, where they also stated that because there was little plastic recycling taking place in Thailand, there were $3.6 billion lost annually from this. And of course, in Thailand, we also have the, in addition to the ecosystem and health challenges that are related to both high plastic production levels as well as high plastic consumption levels. We also have the impact on tourism, whereas especially the high value target group of tourists is also naming this as a big observation from coming back from Thailand. Next slide, please. These are facts and figures that are part of every country profile, and I just use Vietnam as an example here, where we have the different components here spelled out, with both with regards to plastic waste per capita as well as mismanaged plastic waste. And the bubble chart where you can clearly see where a country stands exactly. Where the size also of the bubble relates to the mismanaged plastic waste in tons per year. Next slide, please. And this is also an example from Vietnam, where we have then listed the different policies that address plastic pollution, in this case marine plastic litter, and where there is also an analysis with regard to the implementation stage for these types of policies. Next slide, please. Another example in Malaysia, where we see a really multi-level, multi-actor approach with these different policies that I have listed here, where it's also becoming apparent that in addition to the national and policy implementation focused instruments, there would also be one that more strongly involves the private sector through extended producer responsibility. In Malaysia, it's also quite clear because there is, as you can see with these different policies, a number of different ministries and agencies involved. What I was referring to earlier, there's really also the need for establishment of robust coordination mechanisms between these actors. And of course, this also includes the financing and budgeting for it. Malaysia is also a country where we see that while there is really ample activity in terms of the policy development, enforcement is something that really needs to be worked on. Next slide, please. We also have, for the different country profiles, some snapshots of very specific types of intervention. This is an example from Indonesia, where we have the so-called waste banks, which is really the attempt to make waste visibly valuable to communities and thereby triggering action also with regard to community and individual efforts to clean waste. So in Indonesia, this is a very specific intervention that has also seen some success. Next slide, please. In the Philippines, just as an additional snapshot, we also have a national plan of action for the prevention, reduction, and management of marine litter. And what is here really interesting is that we both have measures in terms of command and control mechanisms, as well as with regard to information mechanisms. So this is really already a sort of next level approach, where it's also demonstrated by the government how much they understand that this is an effort that cannot be solved by government actors alone, but where it's also needed that civil society, private sector actors really come all on board and contribute to solving this problem. And this, includes also the description of each stakeholder's role in the respective issues, so that, there is a systemic understanding of the challenge as well as of the actions that can be done and must be done. Next slide, please. The table that I showed you previously that we used for the policy analysis, of course, also allows for a comparison between the different country profiles. And here what you see is just a quick snapshot to most of our country profiles that are being published or are published already. What you can see, interestingly and maybe not surprisingly, is that there is a large focus right here on the policies covering waste management, and in particular, command and control interventions with regard to waste management. Whereas the production life cycle stage is tackled really very weakly. This is of course very much reflective of the current status that I was also referring to. At the same time, what we can also see as plastic pollution, plastic production and plastic pollution is growing so strongly in the region, is that the command and control mechanisms, where we have 24 policies that are currently active in the countries that we have analyzed here, and the challenge is still growing. So this is also evidence for the fact that implementation and enforcement mechanisms aren't really keeping up with the multitude of policies that are being developed in this space. Next slide, please. Of course, we also looked at the at national as well as regional initiatives that are active in Southeast Asia, and of course, ASEAN needs to be named here, where plastics is part of the economic and environment pillars activities, as well as really excellent work being done by area in terms of analytical work, as well as convening. And last year in October, there was also the ASEAN Declaration on Plastics Circularity, which actually did focus more on the downstream measures. But I mean, as a contribution also to the ongoing plastics treaty negotiations, this was a very valuable and valid communication, of course. Then we also see private sector-led initiatives very active in Southeast Asia as well, particularly from national corporations. So the Global Plastics Action Partnership, managed by the World Economic Forum, is one of them. They actually work very closely with governments in the region. And then, of course, also the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which rather focuses on the so-called waste challenge, and also seeks to leave measures against plastics pollution in the voluntary space. With regard to international development or international cooperation, there are a number of regional and national development cooperation projects that are being led both by European Union, by the German International Cooperation, Technical Cooperation, GIZ, as well as, for example, JICA, the Japanese Development Cooperation Organization. Next slide, please. With regard to the Global Plastics Treaty, of course, Mimi, you can just show everything that we've got here on the slide. What is being discussed quite hotly is the need to reduce the overall volume of plastics produced and plastic products, for example, through a cap. And I cannot speak for the validity of this, but clearly, I mean, the growth trajectory in Southeast Asia with regard to plastics manufacturing and plastics production is incredibly or has been incredibly steady in the past 3 decades. So for sure, this is there is some need to also look at production, not just at the later downstream stages. There is also discussion with regard on a standardized framework for extended producer responsibility. And of course, this is quite interesting as this is an international framework, whereas something like extended producer responsibility would have to be nationally implemented. But this is where discussions are also ongoing. With regard to the aforementioned really needed financial commitments, this is also something that is being discussed in the international treaty negotiations, and then of course also capacity building and technical assistance initiatives. Next slide, please. Arab, and I'm coming to a close. The current state of negotiations is that there was high hopes that the negotiations would be closed, would have been closed last year already. But this proved impossible. There is still also debate on what characteristic the negotiation product will finally hold. And let's say that negotiations are still ongoing to both the characteristic of the Global Plastic Treaty as well as to the fine prints and the larger chapters involved. Next slide, please. And you can just go ahead and it's great to see that there are areas of convergence in terms of waste management, product design, microplastics, as well as the importance of involving the informal sector. And then the next slide, please. But there are the remaining challenges, as I referred to earlier, with regard to production limits or a cap, then also chemicals and polymers of concern, and as well as a waste management only versus a life cycle approach. And we do see, of course, that the fault line for negotiations are between oil and gas producing and polymer producing countries and those countries that do not have this industry. Next slide, please. Yeah, and of course, the binding versus voluntary. With regard to a very quick outlook, but I'm very much looking forward to actually hearing from our participants from the region about this. What has been recurrent recommendations, both in terms of from our expert analysis as well as throughout the analyzed documents and the discussions that we have had. So it's really about adopting circular economy principles, strengthening waste management systems, implementing policy and legislation that is already there, and also raising public awareness and education. And I think, I could have talked a little bit about that also on the comparative slide that I showed you with regard to policy analysis. But this is really, really key, because in many countries in Southeast Asia, plastics are still considered sort of a token of modernity and cleanliness, whereas we see this perspective actually shifting in other countries already, in Europe, for example. But this is really something to take very seriously. Then, of course, also the support of green innovation and entrepreneurship, because it's, the current system will not be coming up with all of the solutions needed, because the current system is in place, because there are profits to be made also from this suboptimal setup. And last but not least, the fostering of regional and global collaboration, because it's clear that this is not a challenge that can be tackled nationally. And with this, I hand over to Sachin and Arab, and looking forward to the contributions from around Southeast Asia.
Cosima, thank you very much. Thank you for presenting shortly the outcome of various reports. I know that you would have needed much more time for that, but you already have it there. It's clear, looking at the challenges and what is needed. And I will look basically at could highlight certain things. We'll come to it later on, the good practices that could be shared, how we can look at this command and control and the multi-stakeholder consultation, the life cycle of plastics, how we can go further with that. And those nice experience on waste banks, how we can share. We'll see if we can come back to those elements from our panelists and speakers. But I will also look at your last slide, which summarizes very much what we will be discussing from now on. And I will be calling on the panel that we'll be having now, and telling them, keep in mind those elements on how we can better mainstream the circular economy principle, how we can better strengthen the waste management policies and action, what type of legislation do we have or we wish to have that could be realistic, relevant, implementable, raise public awareness and education, a fundamental issue, easy to talk about it, but we realize that it's very difficult because it touches on our behavior, each and every one of us. And then the innovation, the importance of innovation in the region. And the Southeast Asia has proven to be extremely fertile in terms of local innovation by small entrepreneurs. And this is something that needs to be valued much more. And of course, collaboration, and that's why we are here. So I will move now next to the panel discussion. We will have two panels, 3 speakers in the first one, 4 in the next one. The first one will be mostly looking at the policies and legislation, trying to see how we can better understand the challenges and look for ways, avenues for improved implementation through a transition. Novita insisted a lot on it, and it is on the title. So not forgiven, but really a transition, how we can move further on that. And with this, we have 3 experts coming from different perspectives. Tobias Nielsen from the EU Plastic Treaty Negotiation Team, European Environmental Agency. You heard a lot about the importance of the EU and how the EU is handling the issue from a different perspective than other countries. I will call it in the global South, even though it doesn't mean much today, and how much the European Environmental Agency is really informing and move ahead. And I know personally from experience and collaboration with the European Environmental Agency, you have been upfront in the SCP agenda, green economy, resource efficiency, and definitely here on the plastic agenda on how you will inform the whole member states and how this can be useful for others. In addition to the question that was shared with you, please take into account what has been presented here, and we'll move further on that. Next one will be Hiroko Matsuo from UNEP Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. As you know, the global negotiations have been initiated in the framework of UNEP to see if we can get this global treaty. It's taken more time than expected, but this is natural in this type of very delicate issues where we don't know yet where we are going exactly in terms of very sensitive issues. So we will hear from Hiroko how to enlighten us on that and how this can be something that the representative of the countries, the negotiators can take over to see how they mainstream in their national policies and in their negotiation. And then we are privileged to have with us a lawyer, Attorney Gregory Rafael Boeta, who we have been talking a lot about this legislation, the enforcement, what will be the needs around that and so on, looking at it from the perspective of Philippines, which, as we have heard, is very much working on the element of command and control and how the enforcement is important in this context. We have shared with the expert a certain set of questions, and that we're not asking you to cover them all, cover some of them that speaks more to your context, your field, in addition to what has been already presented as outcomes from these analysis. And if need be, I will come later on with additional question. Would it be? And the people who would have questions on the chat, please come in while listening and put your question there. So can I ask Tobias to come in with 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll see if I can take 1 or 2 minutes for additional question. Tobias, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arab, and thank you very much for this invitation. So as mentioned, I'm from the European Environmental Agency. So we're a support agency for the European Commission. We provide a lot of data and also knowledge on the state of the environment and climate in Europe. And also, as mentioned, I'm supporting the Commission, and I'm part of the EU delegation to the UN Treaty, where I focus a lot on monitoring reporting. Now, back to what I want to talk to you about is So we heard a lot of, and thanks for the previous speakers who've been providing a very rich overview of all the different efforts that are taking place. I see a lot of commonalities between what's happening there and what's happening in the EU. And I think that speaks to the complexity and some of the challenges that we see with plastics. It's not just one element, it's a range of different plastic polymers, and they are all embedded into products that span a lot of different sectors. So it's not just one sector or one specific policy that we need to focus on. It's really a broad range of policies that we need to use. We need a very big policy toolbox to be able to address the challenges of making plastics more circular. And in the EU, we have already started, and we have had initiatives on plastics for some time. I think it came up very rapidly some 10, 15 years ago, where there was a really big, strong public concern around plastics. It's very evident. You don't need to walk far, also here in the EU, to see plastic filling up on beaches or other places. So there's a really strong public demand for policies on this, and I think that has helped the whole policy process. This is something that consumers and also businesses want. I think maybe I won't mention all the things that we're doing, but maybe I can squeeze it into 3 different transition pathways. So the first one being smarter use. So in a lot of cases, we really need plastics. Plastic is the best material for the job, but when we talk about smarter use, it's all about how can we use it in a better way. So in some cases, there may be products where we don't need plastic products, single-use plastic products, for example, that we don't need, and there we have, for example, the single-use plastic directive that bans some of these products that they're really creating their own consumption demands that are not essential for, let's say, for society. But it's also about encouraging more sustainable consumption patterns and information that we also heard about, so that consumers know what, and we can sort of guide consumers towards more sustainable consumption. The second one is of course increased circularity, and it's really focused on materials recycling and coming back into the economy. So there we have a lot of different examples of that, which was also highlighted before, especially in the waste area. So we have a lot of EPR, we have EPR schemes, we have recycling targets, and I think they can really stimulate and create this infrastructure needed to support collection and separation and also recycling of plastics. But it's not enough just to recycle. You really need to create a demand for recycled plastic content. And I think that's where some of the challenges that we've seen, and something that were the areas that we want to work more on, is to really stimulate a well-functioning market for recycled plastic, because that could also help resolve some of the challenges that we see. The last one I just want to highlight is the alternative feedstocks, and I think that's becoming a growing awareness around the need to shift away from fossil fuels and see what are sustainable alternative feedstocks to oil and gas. So bio-waste, for example, could be used to make new plastics or other bio-based products, and that ensures us that enables us to lower the CO2 emissions from plastics. And also it can make us, like I said, less dependent on fossil fuel. So that's something that we're also looking into. The last thing I want to say is that given all these policies we've had in place for a while, the next things that we really want to look at is implementation. I think that's really critical. So we can design a lot of policies, but to make them work effectively across different regions in EU and also other places is really, I think, where the essential work is needed going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Let me take 1-2 minutes more of that. Everybody will tell us that the context of the EU is very specific and definitely very different from the one of Southeast Asia. So how much what you have been doing in the EU, or the type of information you are providing from your side, can be useful in a region like Southeast Asia, which is facing so much increase in waste plastic, which they don't have yet the level of information and innovation you have in the EU, that they still have scope, I would say, in front of them to move further because they are growing, because the population is demanding. Still, there has been some good stories in the EU that can show that you don't need to be wealthy, rich, before tackling with the issues of plastic. And coming to your point, when you talked about the smarter use, I have been using for more than 10 years while I was still in UNEP, the notion of the good, the bad, and the ugly. There is good plastic that we need to keep, that we can keep. There are bad plastic that we need to get rid of, which is single-use plastic. And there are ugly plastic that we can redesign, recycle, see how to do it. But the issue also of market, how much the market in the EU has been sensitized and increased because we don't have it yet in countries like Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, and so on. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah, I like this, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think, yeah, the market also really needs to work on this. So we can, of course, design single-use plastic directives where we really look to ban certain plastic items. I think it's 10 items that and it's not a ban on all of them. Some of them we ban, and some of them we want to increase awareness around the challenges of this. So it's really a host of different policies that we're looking to minimize the impact of these 10 items, which we found were the most common items on EU beaches. Yeah. But I think you're definitely right that the market and business, and we see a lot of businesses are really interested in changing, but there's certain inertia. There are a lot of lock-ins. I think there are a lot of the way some of the benefits of plastics is also the challenges that it's cheap, that it's it's not seen as a high value product that's easy to dispose of, that really feeds this linear notion that we see in a lot of places. So it's not just about making smart use, but also making plastic seen more valuable. I think so seeing this as a valuable commodity that we need to extend the lifespans of as much as possible. We need to encourage and see the business cases for reuse and not just having disposable cups and so on, and also ensuring that businesses have an incentive, because right now virgin plastic is cheaper than recycled plastic in a lot of cases. It's easy to use, it's easy to get a hold of. So the business case for recycled plastic is something that we're very much looking forward to. How can we strengthen that? How can we make it easier for companies that want recycled plastic but have a hard time getting it because of there might be some border issues, trade issues, or other challenges. So how can we support them to make sure that there is a steady flow of high quality recycled plastics in Europe and elsewhere?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tobias. We might come back to you later on. Hiroko, the word is looking at UNEP because you are the one who have been convening all the discussion on plastics. So as a legal issue, it's taking time, but still there has been some progress. And at the same time, UNEP has been doing important work on SCP, on resource efficiency, on circularity, on plastic waste management. Can you enlighten us on your progress there and what could be of interest for the Southeast Asia region, which is, as we said in the beginning, the most affected one, if you look at it per capita, where still there could be important actions, and you happen to be, luckily for you, based in the region. So probably you can give us some direct insights.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It is a great honor to participate in this panel discussion and this event today. My name is Hiroko Matsuo from UNEP, the regional office for Asia Pacific, located in Bangkok. Yeah, I manage the plastic project in this region. In terms of policies and legislation, the topic in this panel, I really I listened to the previous speakers, and it's really I totally agree that the points mentioned, especially Kojima and also the Tobias, the Southeast Asia have been actively addressing plastic pollution through various policy frameworks and initiatives, including their mostly their special focus on the waste management, but some of the countries have developed their policies related to the sustainable consumption and production cycle economy. So many countries in the region already developed national action plans, let's say, and strategies to address plastic pollution. However, the problem is they're pointed out many times in the previous session. I believe there are challenges to achieve the effective implementation and the enforcement of these plans and the strategies. So first, the challenges, the insufficient infrastructures. Many countries lack the necessary waste management infrastructure to effectively collect, segregate, and recycle plastic waste. Plastic waste collection rate and practices in this region are generally low to moderate. And waste segregation rate is also generally very low level. Second, funding and resources. Although many intergovernmental and also the multi-funding schemes exist, but still limited financial resources and funding, those can hinder the comprehensive implementation of policies and strategies. Third, public awareness and participation is relatively still low in this region. So raising public awareness and encouraging participation in recycling and waste reduction initiatives can be challenging. Lastly, policy enforcement and coordination among the stakeholders, such as government agencies in private sector and civil society, ensuring like consistent enforcement of policies and the regulations across different sectors is often difficult. Also, the effective implementation requires a coordination among various stakeholders, as I mentioned. So, although there are the challenges we can see in this region, however, there is also remarkable progress, I would say. Advanced innovative policy mechanisms that are targeting also upstream solutions rather than simply expanding waste management are also emerging in this region, such as EPL, extended producer responsibility, and also eco-design movement is emerging. First, EPL, as you all know, the EPL is a policy approach that makes producers accountable for their products throughout their entire life cycle, including post-consumer stages. It has been implemented in countries such as Indonesia, Singapore, the Philippines, and Vietnam in this region. The level of EPL implementation varies among countries. Some are practicing voluntary EPL schemes, while some have EPL legislation passed and mandatory. EPL policies are designed differently to fit the economic and social conditions of each country. However, EPL alone is not a sufficient measure to address impact of plastic issue. It should be part of a broader policy set that includes complementary measures. Complementary measures may be, for example, phasing out unnecessary and problematic plastic products, promoting eco-design, circular design, and alternative options, promoting reuse and refill systems, and providing appropriate or economic incentives, for example, tax incentives for companies that reduce or eliminate the use of certain plastics and implement eco-design principles, or establishing deposit return schemes. to encourage consumers to return under the fair containers, etc., etc. Also, I'd like to say about eco-design. One of the most effective complementary measure to EPR is eco-design. Eco-design is a powerful method to prevent and reduce plastic pollution by changing how we design, produce, and manage the plastic products. It is said that a significant share of all product-related environmental issues are determined during the design phase of a product. EPR has the potential to provide the producers with incentives for the design of reusable or more easily recyclable products. Well-designed products work better, last longer in the economy, and have less environmental impact. This applies to all plastic products in packaging, textiles, constructions, fisheries, agriculture, and so on. Eco-design ensures that products and materials keep their value in the economy as long as possible, and aims to reduce or eliminate waste and pollution. In conclusion, EPL and eco-design are those very innovative solutions focusing on the upstream measures, really promising in this region to be introduced and to be implemented. I think I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hiroko. Thank you for insisting on this issue of EPR and eco-design, and there are certainly important elements. We are already late on time, but I hope that the participants will agree to stay some 15 minutes more later on, because we cannot conclude just in 25 minutes, much to say. Hiroko, just a question to you. UNEP has been working very much on the green public procurement. How much are you considering plastic in this, and how much the green public procurement legislation could help in better managing the plastic and access to market?
Oh, thank you for the question. Sorry, but I'm not really well known about green procurement aspect. So I think there are different questions should be suitable for me. Sorry about that. I think I can't have the very proper good answer to that question.
No problem.
Sorry
Don't
about
worry.
that.
No problem. I know your colleagues who are working on that. Thank you very much for into this, and let me now move to the third panelist, Attorney Gregorio Rafael Bueta, lawyer and Switch Asia expert in the Philippines. We have been talking a lot about policies, legislation, and enforcement. And this is something that I believe switch very well to a lawyer. How can we effectively ensure enforcement? And we have heard a lot also about the issue of command and control. So from your perspective, how this comes in addition, of course, to the set of questions that were sent to you and the ones that will speak back to you. Mr. Bueta?
Yes, thank you, Arab, and good afternoon to everyone from Manila. It's a pleasure to be speaking at this event. I'd like to start by pointing out what our colleague from the EU, Novita, said earlier, and I think which you also highlighted, Arab, that what we need here is a deep transformation. This is not something which will happen overnight. Our transition to a circular economy and to sustainable consumption production policies will really take time. And Cosima also mentioned about the multi-pronged policy approach which is happening all across Asia. And I think yes, that's true, especially here in ASEAN. But the challenge is this multi-pronged approach and strategy is happening in an already very crowded policy agenda. You have many ASEAN countries who are, of course, still developing, hoping to reach middle income status, for example, in a few years. But at the same time, you still have your socioeconomic issues, your and your other concerns, which are taking up the space of our policymakers. And this makes it even more challenging, not just in putting in place the policies that are needed to push for circular economy. Tobias mentioned smarter use, materials recycling, for example. Hiroko mentioned EPR and eco design. All of these will have to vie for space in this very crowded policy agenda. And I think this is where the government's role really comes in pushing for the different policies. Um, when governments uh, uh, have the political will to say that we are moving towards SCP, we are moving towards circular economy, it's a signal that that the transition is starting. And that is the time when the government should put in place mandatory measures or mandatory pronouncements that circular economy is a goal that we want to achieve. So, SCP is something which we will do as a country together, and of course, this has to be done with in partnership with other stakeholders, with the private sector and with the public. But that needed push to start the ball rolling, so to speak, will need to come from the government. Um, One of the things which governments need to do is first ensure its alignment with other sectoral goals, as I said earlier. Very crowded policy agenda already, particularly when you talk about socioeconomic issues. Second, as some of the previous panelists and speakers mentioned, there needs to be mandatory measures to be put in place. Um, Not just, for example, in eco design, in pushing for and supporting reuse and refilling and putting in place EPR, but also in signaling that we are willing to put in place public funds and at the same time, looking for the counterpart private financing. Arab, you mentioned about green public procurement. Incidentally, the Philippines has a revised, just passed, I think about a year ago or almost 2 years ago, a revised procurement act, which pushes for green public procurement as one of the modalities by which the government needs to. But of course, some have already said that there are already signs and signals of the ongoing corruption, graft and corruption, even in green public procurement. And then again, these are the governance issues which our leaders will need to address in order to support circular economy. A last important point, I think, when we start talking about and putting in place these policies is that we have to be mindful that government also needs to be protecting rights. And when we talk about rights, when we talk about these rights, it's not just these rights related to environmental justice and climate justice, but we also have to look at how the policies which government are pushing for um, can already, for example, support a just transition. And if we talk about the just transition in circular economy, we're not just looking at the informal waste sector. I think it was mentioned earlier that it is a critical factor when you look at EPR or waste management policies in the region, but also how the transition will, for example, affect those working in the plastic manufacturing sector, those working in factories, those working in the distribution and logistics chains. Because when we start pushing for these mandatory cuts, it's of course there will be green jobs and newer jobs created because of the push for SCP and circular economy. But at the same time, you will have workers displaced who will need reskilling, who will need support in the transition. So all of these need to be considered and established by the government in clear and concrete policies. Just as a last point, and maybe to highlight, EPR, of course, is growing in recognition in ASEAN, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, for example, already have policies in place. Malaysia and Thailand are under development. However, it's interesting to point out that none of the countries in ASEAN have a clear reuse and refilling policy, for example, or strong legislation or policy on eco-design or mandatory use of recycling materials, for example. Although in previous studies that we worked on, the enabling legislation and regulation is there. The policies are there which might support it, but there needs to be this push for our legislators, for the government to put in place these policies. And also to point out, it was mentioned earlier by Cosima, I think that yes, most of the countries in the region do have marine litter policies or a marine litter action plan. And this is complemented by policies and pronouncements on sustainable consumption and production also. For example, the Philippines has its own SCP action plan, which is being linked with its EPR plan, its marine litter plan. Then again, and perhaps as a last point regarding all these policies, there needs to be some way by which our policymakers link all of these. There's this danger of being siloed. Let's deal with marine pollution, let's deal with SCP, let's deal with waste management, but it's not being linked. And I think that will be one critical factor and challenge for policymakers to ensure effective implementation and enforcement. I'll stop here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gregorio. Avoid the silo approach, go for an integrated approach, but be aware of the difficulties in implementing EPR and so on. Now, just one brief questions. We can take, government can take mandatory measures, and tomorrow there might be a global plastic treaty that, let us say, will be imposed on all the countries and so on. But there need to be some capacity building, not just for the local people, but for also policymakers and lawyers. How do you proceed with that?
Thank you. I think this is where, if I may link it to another aspect of my work, I do teach at one of the law schools as well, and I've been involved in capacity building of judges and lawyers across the region for several years now. I think this is where that knowledge and awareness about environmental laws, climate laws, and this emerging and evolving sustainability laws does come in. To not just prepare those in the legal field, but also our policymakers. When we start making discussions about the Global Plastics Treaty, about environmental laws, about environmental rights and environmental justice, mandatory parts of our education, then that is already a starting point of the capacity building that we need. But of course, probably lawyers those who became lawyers 10, 15 years ago were not aware of the Global Plastics Treaty, for example. So there needs to be continuing education, continuing engagement of the different stakeholders. And I think some of the panelists and the speakers earlier did mention that information campaigns and capacity building should be a critical part of any initiative, and perhaps here to highlight, it's not just the policymakers or the legislators at the higher level of government, but I think especially in ASEAN, it's very important that we also capacitate those in the local government level, those in the subnational level, because in most ASEAN countries, it's actually these local governments, these subnational governments who are the frontliners in implementing environment and climate policies. So they would also need to be capacitated and be ready to implement all these upcoming measures such as the Global Plastics Treaty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you very much for highlighting the element of the local governments. We have concluded this first panel. I have not been good on timing. I apologize for that, but the topic is so important. And I thank you very much for being patient with us. So Tobias, Hiroko, Gregorio, thank you very much for all your insights. And now let's move to the next panel that has 4 speakers, and I believe he will be more efficient than I have been on time management. Sachin, the floor is yours. Cosima, sorry, I said Kazim because he's close to me. I look at him. Cosima, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for a very, very lively discussion, and also the chat is quite alive, which I really appreciate. Please, even if I'm not able to read along now, but please continue sharing. It's very, very interesting to also read your points of view from the participants. I'm very pleased to now move to the private sector perspectives that we really want to bring here as well. And we have 4 distinguished panelists that will contribute. starting with Eknarin Arya Wongvivat from the WWF Thailand, then moving on to Amrendra Kumar, who is the founder and COO of ASM Recyclix, which is actually, I think, if I researched this correctly, active globally. But Amrendra, you will speak to this. Then followed by Put Metz, who is the founder of Precious Plastics in the Philippines, and also Trinh Hoa, who is a co-founder of Bioplastics from Vietnam. And Eknarin, maybe we will just start with you and your take on, yeah, let's say the policy private sector interface, because I think you have also done some extensive work on this from the WWF. Yeah, and how current market conditions and the, let's say, frameworks created by government affect businesses' ability to implement sustainable practices regarding plastics, and also maybe what are urgent needs in this space for change to happen.
Yeah, thank you, Cosima. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Switch Asia for organizing this event and also invite me to join. My name is Eknarin Arya Wongvivat, and I serve as a marine program lead of the WWF Thailand. Two of our projects as a plastic smart city that is from the WWF initiative, and also we do it like a collaboration with the GIZ and UNEP on the like a marine litter prevention to reduction and sustainable design and recycling of the plastic packaging that's called the marine design. And also we still working with another foundation like a Coca-Cola to implement in the field or like a local level. And also I have had opportunity to work closely with communities, business, SME, and municipalities across Thailand on advancing plastic waste reduction and circular economy models. From our experience, one of the most critical lessons is systematic change is only possible through a strong collaboration across all sectors. We have seen firsthand how engaging informal sector, particular waste picker, known as a Saling in Thailand, and connecting them with the SMEs or recycling market, and can create tangible impact while also promoting social inclusion and dignity the waste management. At the same time, we are recognized that the business cannot act alone. The supportive policy framework, incentive for eco-innovation, and public-private partnership are essential to drive the shift from the linear to the circular economy. In many Southeast Asia countries, including Thailand, businesses faces both structural and operational barriers when trying to adopt the sustainable plastic practices. The recycling market heavily rely on the informal sector like a Saling in Thailand, who collect the waste from door to door. However, they lack official support and protection. Without a national EPR law, business also have a little financial or regulatory incentive to change their packaging design or invest in a better waste management system. Through our Plastic Smart City project in Surat Thani province in the southern of the Thailand, we found that organizing the Saling into an association providing the capacity building and linking them formally to the recycler, we could create a self-reinforcing system that improve both livelihood and recycling rate. This shows that even difficult the market condition, local innovation can create enabling model for the business and municipalities. And the collaboration is critical because of no single actor control the entire plastic value chain. In Surat Thani, by connecting the households, Saling waste pickers, junk shops, MRFs, and recycler, we can create a clear, efficient ways to resource pathway. For example, households are now encouraged to sort plastic properly because of the selling offer the better price for the clean materials. Junk shop guarantee the volume because of the organized collection route, and the recycler can rely on the cleaner input system. This is a vertical integration significantly reduce the plastic leakage into the river and create a new income stream in every state. Such a collaboration model, building the supply chain trust and accountability, can be adopted across the Southeast Asia. And also, I think this is my point first. And also, if you have any questions or like a next question, I can share more.
Yeah, that's a really interesting project that you referred to from Surat Thani. In terms of transferability and scalability, do you see that this would be possible within Thailand and potentially even in the region?
Yeah, it can be transferred to the other countries. Our result, over 200 tons plastic recovered by 2 years, and also 40 new waste picker members join the formal system. And also it can be like a model to replicate in the other area is like a similar context with us.
And with regard to plastic producers and manufacturers, do they also play a role in the system, or is the system really very much focused on the waste management?
Actually, they're like a make a MOU with like a junk shop, like to provide like a price that is reasonable for the junk shop, and also for they get the good quality of the material that you need to recycle. Yeah, we do all of the chain or the pathway. Yeah.
In terms of legislation, what would be maybe directives or interventions that would really support these types of business models? Or do you think that what is already in place in Thailand, and also specifically in the project pilot area, is it sufficient?
Yes, I think that is a important thing, and also I would like to elaborate more from the green procurement things that Arab asked before. I think the green procurement and eco label can significantly shift the market dynamic in Thailand. The government procurement policy are still developing, but we are proposing under the Marie Design project that company use certificates sustainable packaging. For example, high recycle content or easier to recycle design should pay a lower EPR fees. And this one, I think that it can be implemented with a business partner. Yeah.
Well, very interesting. And this is actually a great segue to our next panelist, AK. Because I think this is exactly one aspect that you are tackling through Recyclex, if I understand correctly, right? So linking producers with their product, so that monitoring and therefore also further managing of then plastic waste is attributable. But please talk to us about it a little bit.
Sure. And I'm really thankful to Switch Asia and also my my co-panelists on this, Agarin. I think very, very aptly put in terms of the efforts which is being put in Thailand. And just to, you rightly said about the work which we do, and just to elaborate a bit further on this. So our role is to ensure the most important factor in the whole circular supply chain, which is traceability. That when we say that X tons or X million kilograms of plastic was collected and recycled, our role is to ensure that there is a clear traceability and chain of custody right from the plastic being collected till it goes and forms part of the final product. And that's what we do. And this work we do in around 36 countries today, countries which have EPR or which do not have EPR. And we'll see a very stark difference in terms of whole adoption of this ecosystem and also the results it is able to deliver in countries which has a mandatory EPR and the ones which don't have a mandatory EPR. Now, specifically, since we are very active in the Philippines and we have been working very closely on the ground, and today, on average year, we are tracking around 25 to 45,000 tons of plastic materials from collection to recycling. So I think what's really important to see in this overall landscape has been the fact that once the government comes out with a policy to support plastic circularity, the private sector also comes out and demonstrates some level of commitment that, okay, if there is an EPR, we will take these first few steps to adopt and comply with the regulations. And then from there on, it's a journey of mutual trust. As the private sector continues to make investment in strengthening the packaging or increasing the recycled content, the government also keeps, unless the government keeps also supporting with, say, an incentive mechanism, policy consistency, simplified compliance, this ecosystem thrives really well. But the moment we see that there is a disconnect between the policy and the initiatives being taken on the ground, we find that these initiatives really don't start delivering the result. And I think from what has happened in the Philippines, we're really happy to see that, the policy and the commensurate efforts taken by the private sector has been really positive on this. Another thing which we have seen, and I think I saw a question on the chat in terms of, yes, in the 2023, we did achieve more than 20% compliance as far as the EPR was concerned. And even in 2024, as per the latest stats which I have, we are already close to the 40% mandate which was there for this. Last we checked in March when we had the status check, we were already somewhere around 36-37% compliance. So we are pretty sure that by the day when we close the compliance for last year, we will be hitting the target of 40%. But having said that, it's also equally important that the investments are made in infrastructure that creates products, and then there is a clear path to monetization of the product or sellability of those products. Because when you're talking about plastics, anything and everything what we do must have a scalability potential. Unless things are scalable, it becomes very difficult to really create those center of excellence and then spread it out and create a larger market for it. We've seen a lot of examples of very innovative ideas, but fail to scale because the overall market is not there, or the product market fit is not there, or even the product is something which nobody needs. Even sometimes, even that also happens. So I think this ecosystem thrives really well with a strong policy, a positive approach from the private sector, and a clear path to what we internally call it's a path to market for the products which come out of the plastic circular economy. Once those are there, we internally feel that these are the right ingredients to make such circularity programs really successful.
With regard to other, let's say, supporting activity spaces, like, for example, the financial system, ESG investment, etc., is this also something where you would have hopes that in future there can be a stronger reliance on mobilizing finance from the private sector, or would you see the efforts for the international agreement to be more promising in this regard, with regard to mobilizing public financing instead?
Yeah, I think a lot of investments and positive action on this space is slightly awaiting the kind of formalization of the plastic treaty. And since we have also been part of the INC process all this while as observers, so we have seen that it's really something which can really change the game on the ground in terms of the unlocking the funds which are required to be invested, and the ability of the donor organizations to be able to see the real impact on the ground. So yeah, I think while private sector would continue to make those voluntary commitments, when it comes to large capital projects which might be beyond the sometimes even the ability to fund, or sometimes even the commercial viability of such projects in the first place, I think public funds would be really instrumental in getting those in from the ground. And while the funding is important, I think I missed this highlighting the importance of the fact that all of this has to be done under the realm of just transition, because we can never forget the importance of the last mile workers or the waste collectors who actually make all of this ecosystem work, because it's only because of them that countries, especially in the global south, are able to channelize so much of amount of material out from the landfills or out from the marine environment or from the rivers. Unless their roles are recognized and they are equally compensated, which I have seen as some very successful models, which actually create a very just transition in terms of the entire EPR monetization is very evenly distributed within the supply chain to ensure that everybody in the value chain are equally motivated for contributing to the overall impact. But again, coming back to your question, I think public funds would be critical in transforming the plastic circularities especially in and also the overall ESG framework for a foreseeable future.
Thereby both providing kind of the space in which the industry can grow into through both incentivizing as well as enforcing mechanisms.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, very interesting. And this brings me to our next panelist, but Metz, who is the founder of Precious Plastics in the Philippines, because I think also from your perspective as a business owner in this space, this sort of interplay between incentivizing and enforcement is really something that where you have built your business case around. Please share it with us.
Okay. Well, that's I guess that's kind of a loaded question there. I prepared like a small statement, I guess. Precious Plastic, our mission is to make waste plastic precious. In the Philippines, of course, it's 2.7 million tons of plastic waste generated annually, and a lot of it going into the oceans. And we're driving a circular economy by empowering communities and entrepreneurs to turn plastic waste into valuable products. We do this through innovative, accessible, and sustainable recycling solutions tailored to local needs. This year, we've taken the bold step forward with our latest innovation, a $20,000 starter plastic recycling line designed to produce plastic lumber. It's designed for remote areas with limited electricity because it can run on a standard household 220 volt connection. And it can produce about 1 fence post every 6 minutes. It's affordable and low energy solution that for far-flung communities, because in the plastic recycling scene, it's not always economical to, especially in the Philippines, to send stuff all the way back on a truck all the way to Manila for recycling because of the transportation. And this year we've turned on 3 new recycling factories already. They're all fully operational. So in our main facility in Antipolo, Rizal, it's a dual purpose hub. We fabricate recycling equipment for others, and we operate our own plastic lumber processing plant. We showing people that plastic waste can be a reliable resource for construction and beyond. One of our latest innovations tackles the Philippine sachet economy, because single-use sachets make up over half of our plastic waste, and also these sachets don't really have much of a buyer. There's not much of a commercial market yet for this, so we're working on turning this sachet like this into something more valuable. And by that, we're shredding and processing the single-use plastic, because we don't believe that there's a such thing as a single-use plastic. It still has energy, it still has use, it still has value, even if it's something like this. It still has a lot of use before it makes it ends up in the final stop at the either the landfill or waste to fuel. And so what we do is we shred and we process this into plastic lumber, and we also added biochar to it to reduce VOCs, and it makes it stronger, it makes a reliable product. And so anyways, thanks for your, so looking ahead, we're pursuing ambitious growth. So we're applying for grants from the Global Plastic Action Partnership and the EU Philippines Green Economy Program. So these funds will help us scale up our model and commission more shops. Our goal for 2025 is 2 tons per day. So if you have any questions, we welcome your questions.
Good. Yeah, exactly. With regard to the products that the lumber is actually used in, what are your experiences with this, and what is also the demand for these types of products?
Well, right now, most of our buyers have been agriculture use and landscaping use. Mm-hmm. Before we started with the biochar, the plastic was a little bit, either we had to buy a commercial pigment, which was a little bit expensive, mm-hmm. or we had to sort it by color, or without the coloring, it was a little bit ugly. And mm-hmm. So that's why we're using the biochar now. Mm-hmm. But initially, I think we're going for just fence post. It's a simple product. Everyone needs it. Mm-hmm. In the Philippines, everyone needs a fence post if you're a farmer or a mm-hmm. municipality. And right now they're just made with cement, and mm-hmm. the sale price with that is economical to convert this into a fence post.
Mm-hmm. 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 Very interesting. And with regard to characteristics, material characteristics, is this something that you also have to figure out technically, or is this something where you say that it's very easy for you to get the same quality of material to be then further recycled into other useful products?
I would compare it to cooking. It's not an exact science. The plastic varies day to day and hour mm-hmm. to hour, depending on what goes through the machine and what residues are mm-hmm. in the machine. We don't wash our plastic because that would mean that we would have wastewater disposal to worry about. Mm-hmm. Right. But of course, the dirty plastic will emit VOCs from food residue. So mm-hmm. that's why we're adding in. That's one of the reasons why we're adding in the biochar. Initially, it was kind of an accident that we found that, because we were just looking at it as the coloring, and we discovered that the smell and the odor and all that was greatly reduced when we started using the biochar.
Mm-hmm. 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 Very interesting.
And so, yeah.
In terms of, let's say, national or even potentially international regulation with regard to recyclable material, do you have like a wish list, and could you share like your top 3 wishes with us with regard to material characteristics?
I think it would be better to, well, as far as like in the packaging, the dyes and printing inks. We run into issues with that, and in the plastic lumber, mm-hmm. some dyes that people use, they're very noxious and very bad mm-hmm. odor. That would be one thing, especially with the VOCs. I would say that's probably going to be the biggest one. And then, the rest is just, educating people and, having them, because people don't have a respect for it and of the material. They just, So, yeah, that would be like my top two things.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this perspective from the Philippines. And I would like to now move on to our panelist, Trinh Hoa from Vietnam, who is co-founder of Bioplastics, which tackles the plastics challenge in its own way. Please, Trinh, please tell us a little bit about the business case and your most recent experiences.
Thank you, Cosima. And
Yes,
any other presenter. I really enjoyed the discussion so far, which is very intense, and it's which cover nearly areas of plastic innovations in recycling and circular economy. And I'm very glad to be a different approach to reducing plastic by replacing plastic with bioplastic. So my name is Huan Chi. I'm a co-founder, and we have established in the last few years. And we currently operated a factory in Ho Chi Minh City. We have been recognized worldwide for the technology in converting bio-waste into biomaterials. And our products is about up to 50% of bio-waste. And I think it's a very to replace most single-use plastic and other industrial applications. So our innovation include not only technology in material science and biotechnology, but also in the way our business model operates. We are not conflict with fossil fuels because we use biomass, and not issuance also not different from the other generation of bioplastic, which is used the starch-based material. And our product is biodecomposable, composable in the natural environment. It's not requiring any treatment facility as compared to other bioplastics. So we can say that our business model, we are currently able to commercialize, and our products are already sold in the market. And we work with the other business corporations who are having large consuming plastic to phasing out the plastic in the supply chain. So that is a snapshot of this.
And I was just asking the previous panelist for a wish list for you as a business owner from government, either national government or potentially even the international negotiations. What would be your most important wish to be able to invest further into the business and have it thrive?
Thank you for the question. I think many presenters have already mentioned the market for the products. And similarly, bioplastic is a new emerging type of materials, which is really being support from the government regulation. Well, in Vietnam, for example, we also need a policy framework for the bio-based and biomaterials. This compared to other material which is existing and it's a long history establishment. So we also need that the regulation point of view to enable the markets. And equally, we have, for example, with P4G, we were one of those startup in Vietnam to secure the funding from P4G, for example, to help us to support enabling policy and also to expand the market. So I think the policy, for example, to reduce single-use plastic we happen in Vietnam as well. Not only just voluntary basis, but enforcement, for example. And others wishes that we want the market to be educated and further raising the awareness of the society, policymakers, and other stakeholders as well on the needs materials. And for example, someone had mentioned the procurement policy to be active. And so supporting this innovation so that we can have a more comprehensive solution to plastic.
Great. Thank you so much.
I just want to add it, one more thing. For example, like a lot of differential policies that could create to innovate itself. So for us, to support like innovator layers. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is for sure one aspect, because innovation kind of begets innovation. Where once the space is created for more business models to exist, it's a question of time until further actors enter the market, and there are more winners created also from a non-plastics reliant system, or non-fossil plastics reliant system, virgin fossil plastics reliant system, to be overly precise. Yes, so thank you so much for these different perspectives from our private sector panelists, civil society panelists with Egnerin, and I would hand over now to my colleague Sachin. Please excuse all of us for running over time, but I think I hope the discussion was as interesting to you as it was to me. And Sachin, please come in and share the main insights that you have hopefully garnered from today's session.
Thank you, Cosima, and may I also thank all speakers. Wonderful interactions, and what a challenge to then sort of summarize. I think there are so many points mentioned, but I think there are 3 or 4 that speak to me quite strongly, and one is, of course, and I pick it up from the last point that Trin mentioned, that is about differential pricing and preferential procurement as well. And I think this is very important, and it also relates to an earlier discussion on EPR and eco-design, where EPR is supposed to lead to eco-design, but as it was also remarked in the chat discussion, that it hasn't really even happened so in EU, which has a lot of experience with EPR. And our work on EPR has, we've learned from that it's really the economic viability of the recycled materials that prevents or promotes the eco-design to take place. And as Grip also mentioned, while talking about EPR, specifically in the case of Philippines, is that the mandatory recycled content is usually missing from many EPR policies. So as long as some of these points come in, mandatory recycled content, and then giving preferential EPR free treatment, which Egnerin mentioned, and Egnerin, I can also mention that there are a few other governments in the region and in South Asia which are also have got similar proposals that EPR fee should be more competitive for the materials which are already of recycled content. So I think that's a very important point on policy, that how different pieces of the policies should now connect on these different specific issues, and that would streamline a lot of the market related gaps that we have addressed or identified in this discussion. The second point is really about collaboration. Usually when we speak of collaboration, it is between the different stakeholders, and the last two panels really brought that out, that how different stakeholders have collaborated. But I think what we many times forget is that within the same stakeholder group, there's still more collaboration that is to be desired. Again, in the policy discussion, it came out that within the government departments, there is more collaboration that is desired and warranted. Many times the government departments, ministries, fail to cooperate, or across the hierarchy of the government governance and system. And so, that's where then you see what we already see, when something that has been remarked quite a lot at the beginning is that while there have been so many strategies and road maps and action plans in Southeast Asian countries, the implementation is not commensurate, all those policy documents. But then also within the civil society and the international organizations, we many times see that they themselves don't collaborate, and there is often, as a result, there's duplication, replication of work happening. Too many of the same actors and funds chasing more or less the same region and the same projects, or even the same recipients. And similarly in the private sector, many times intellectual property and competitiveness takes over, some of these larger systemic issues that they have actually created solutions for. But then, of course, one can understand that they need to make a return on their investment. And that here is where, again, public financing becomes very important, something that AK also alluded to, though perhaps in a slightly different context. But, the governments really need to also put in their public funds in mainstreaming some of these innovative solutions, but by compensating the innovators. And we have seen successful models of that in the pharmaceutical industry, right? So I think that is something that can be borrowed from there. Finally, the third point, I think the most important one is the informal sector. It's not only unique to Southeast Asia, we see it in South America and parts of Africa also. I think the informal workers really do their job of keeping our streets clean, our backyards clean. And many times we actually talk about formalizing the sector. But I think the appropriate thing to do would be to make a system, design a system which is inclusive of the informal sector, and not just, converting the nature of formalizing the sector. I think there's a world's difference between the two approaches. But at the same time, ensuring that they get compensated for and their rights are also honored. So all of those things also need to come in mind. Many times, in a lot of the collaborative projects between the private sector, that also then includes the informal sector. The informal sector is still not duly compensated for. So we need to learn from some of those things and leverage. I think the biggest asset here is the informal sector. And I think we need to leverage rather than replace them or change their character completely. Once again, thank you very much. And my sincere apologies also to all of you for keeping you a bit longer, or rather a lot longer than we had desired. But thank you very much for your excellent contributions and keeping also the discussions on the chat lively. Really appreciate it. Arab.
Thank you all. I will not add anything to that. I mean, we have abused of your patience. We're already half an hour late. So we had a great summary here and there. I might be adding, but there's no need for that. We will share with you the video recording very soon. So please go ahead and see that, and there will be some follow-up activities with different person, any of you. Thanks a lot again. Very lively discussion, very rich. We could have gone for even 1 hour more, but thanks a lot for already the half hour more, and 2 hours is already a long session. Thanks a lot, and we keep in touch together.
Thank you.
very
all.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.